You may have noticed that a new vehicle just kind of randomly appeared in the yard here. Now this thing does not start, run, drive, or stop, but it is super cool. And when it's priced at scrap metal value, that just makes it an investment, not a project. So let's see if we can get our investment to drive around. Now, what this is a Coleman, made by Coleman truck. I think they were in Colorado, and it is what's known as an MB4 or a G40 aircraft tug. This is actually four-wheel drive and four-wheel steering. That's what got me interested here. Now, this is pretty much like a regular old truck. Few minor differences, slightly heavier duty. Now, it's a real truck bumper here, actual metal, no plastic here. It's not even stamped sheet metal. It's not even fabricated out of the plate. Well, that's solid. 10.5 inches by 5.5 inches by 76 inches of solid steel bumper. The only cutout are these lifting rings, so you can pick the whole thing up by its bumper. Look, just cleans the paint. It is a maximum of 40 miles an hour, absolute flat out, and meant for being slow for towing planes. You're not going that fast then. But it has a lot of pulling power. Apparently the drawbar pull is 10,000 pounds. It's rated for towing planes over 100,000 pounds. So it can pull. Now the front tires are 10/20s, 10 inches wide, 20-inch rim. They measure out to about 40 inches tall. The rear tires are 11/20s, so 11 inches wide, 20-inch rim. They're around 42 inches tall. Now, the whole two different sizes on here is a bit of a problem. It probably should have the same size all the way around, so eventually I'll take care of that, but until it drives, it's not an issue. Those tires are at least 50 years old. They still hold air. The power steering has a tank on the fender for the reservoir, and the feed line to the pump is over 1 inch diameter. That's some serious fluid. This not only has hydraulic assist in the front, has full hydraulic rear steering. Now this is the rear axle here. There's the tie rod, and this cylinder right here, this hydraulic cylinder, pushes and pulls so you get your steering. Now this does have suspension. It's got leaf springs all the way around, solid axles. We're going to figure out that gear ratio. 1, 6, and there we go. So around 6.5 to 1. We've got big drum brakes on every wheel. They don't work. There's no brakes on this thing at all. It does have an externally contracting drum brake for emergency brake. That also doesn't work. Also, you have a brake booster. Now this is kind of a unique system. There's a master cylinder under the hood. This is the booster with another master cylinder. We'll have to get that going eventually. But it is a vacuum booster. I can see the vacuum line. So I might be able to get power brakes here. Now under the hood, we've got a Chrysler 6-cylinder flathead industrial motor. As you can see, it's missing the carburetor. I got a pile of pieces of carburetor in a box. Not all the pieces, most of them. So basic flathead, simple motor, easy to work on. So that's nice. The transmission is a 5-speed industrial model with a torque converter and a hydraulic release. That right there, covered up in tape, is where the hydraulic release is supposed to be. I have the schematics on the door here. The previous owner did all the hydraulic routing, wrote it directly on the door. This is better than having a manual. It's written on the vehicle itself, so it's hard to lose. Now I have no idea what year this is. I'm gonna have to find a serial number. The data plate is missing, but there should be a serial number somewhere on it. But they were made from 1956 to 1975 with this body style. So let's call it 60s. Now in the rear, it's supposed to have a solid steel weight here, just like a rear bumper that's solid metal, just like the front. It was unbolted, there's stuff torched off, all that's gone. Here's the factory gas tank. That I was told has a hole in it. Here's another gas tank welded on. No cap though. So I expect this one's no good also. We've got the exhaust system going to a muffler that exits right in front of the rear tire here. For some reason it has a giant pipe plug on it. Extra exhaust outlet, draining it. I don't know why they did that. Now it has an interior. It is covered in some kind of rodent dropping, so one of the first things is going to be to wash this out. But there are 2 seats, a steering wheel, all the normal stuff for driving. You get the 5-speed. Now on the bottom of the 5-speed lever there's a button. That's how you're supposed to unload the clutch in order to shift. That doesn't work. Emergency brake doesn't work. This lever, it locks the differential in the transfer case. So backwards is locked, forward is unlocked. Gas pedal brake, no clutch because it's an automatic kind of, but the 5-speed manual, but it has a torque converter, so no clutch pedal. Here we have rear steering. So that's what you use to turn the rear axle. Presumably a horn button that's frozen on the side here. It does have windshield wipers, has a sunroof. That's so you can see if you're about to hit a plane. Rear view mirror, sliding back glass. We got gauges, water temperature, fuel, oil pressure, amp meter, all the basic stuff. On the front we still have the plate for the tower signals, so when you're towing the plane around you know what to do. Rear floodlights, choke, heater, ignition, lights, and wipers. Looking at the odometer here, this thing has 12,000 miles on it. At the speed these things travel, I am sure that is not rolled over. I don't think that is 112,000, I think that's 12,000. Now, the other thing, it sounds like low mileage, but keep in mind that is at a low speed. Probably average 10 miles an hour through its life. So that would be about 1,200 hours. Still not too much. Figure 1,200 hours at 50 miles an hour, you're looking like what, a 60,000 mile car. So it should be in pretty decent shape, except for things that have been neglected and rusted and have gone by the wayside. So the first step is clean up the interior so there's not poop in it. Next step is change the oil. The previous owner told me that the reason he took the carb apart is it didn't seal. He tried to gravity feed it, it flooded it badly, so the crankcase is full of gasoline. So before I even turn that motor over, I want that to be pure oil. No sense in trying to ruin something immediately. So I'm going to clean, change the oil, then we're going to try to get it running. One thing that's sort of cool is the way the hood opens. Both sides flip up, you can do them at the same time. You can go right through there, see right out the other side, get to everything real easy. There's lots of room to work on this thing. Got my diesel oil filling it up right now. Next thing I'm going to do is work on the carburetor issue. Now, this doesn't have one, you can see, but I did get a pile of carburetor pieces in a box with this, and a rebuild kit, and actually pretty much everything I need, minus a few little things, to put a carburetor on here that was on here. However, years ago, I had bought a carburetor for a Jeep project that didn't quite go the way I wanted, ended up going a different direction. Now this thing's been sitting on this workbench for years, but got a carburetor. Now this is listed on eBay as 4 parts are not working. I found one screw that was cross-threaded, so I think that was the problem. I already fixed that, but I never used it because it didn't fit what I wanted it to fit. But I think it'll fit this vehicle. And the bolts, yeah, the bolts will line right up. But I'm noticing a few problems here. Notice how that's rocking? That is not going to seal. I wonder if anything ever sealed on this, because this screw here is actually raised up. I'm also noticing there's a little port here. Connects to here. I don't know, that might be important. So I'm going to cut out the gasket a little bit to make sure I can get that port to the center vacuum. A lot of gaskets have little grooves in them to let that happen, so we're going to try it, see how it works. I don't even know if this carburetor works anyway, so how much worse can it get? Now I'm noticing that this manifold has an adapter plate on it, which is basically a square with holes on either side this way, and then 2 holes here. This is where the carburetor originally mounted. This looks like where this was adapted into the manifold, and they're the same distance apart. That means I can take this carburetor and plunk it on this way, this way, this way, or this way, which gives me some options. Now, this is the way I'm going to go for a couple reasons. Basically, it's the way it was originally set and all the linkages work.
We have a throttle linkage right here that goes that way to accelerate. This one has the throttle arm on the same side. Rotation is correct. I am going to have to extend the arm up, but that shouldn't be a big deal. I'll just attach something to this one and go upwards. Also, this has a manual choke. The choke cable is right over here, so that'll just bolt right on. And then the fuel inlet is right here, and that is going to go this way down. The fuel pump would be right where that rag is. So that's actually where the fuel would normally come up and around, so that all lines up nicely. So I think I'm going to go for that orientation. The problem is it doesn't fit. If I put it on, the bolts are right, but the bowl hits that head bolt, so I actually can't fit this right here. Now I think I'm going to go the route of a spacer and just move it up a little bit, and then it should be okay. To figure out my distance, got some pieces of stock. I can just play with height. That's a 1/2 inch. Now that actually clears that head bolt, so I'm okay, but it's pretty close, and that means that bowl is going to get heated up. That's set for 1 inch now. That gives me a lot of clearance from that head bolt, and also gives me a good air gap, so that bowl will stay a little bit cooler with all the air from the radiator and radiator fan flowing over it. I think this is what I'm going to go with. I just need to make a 1 inch spacer, and we'll be good to go to start hooking stuff up. Now this is a very common setup for a lot of things. Basically a hole and 2 holes. So I was thinking I could find something that would be already pre-made. I could use as a spacer. Could cut off the end of an old master cylinder, same basic idea, and cut a hole through the middle. But that has a drain on the bottom, so that won't hold. Here's a head pipe from an F-head motor. That flange is about right. It's about a 1/4 inch thick. I don't have enough of these to stack together. This old Stinger from a Baja Bug, that has the right flange too. That's about 3/16 thick, so not quite thick enough. And yes, it's purple. I had to color match my tow vehicle to my jet ski. Now I could machine one on a milling machine just like this one, with a chunk of aluminum just like that one, and hole done. But that seems like a lot of work because I have to like program the interpolation and all that. So we're gonna go easier. That's sure a lot easier than machining it.
I've got my spacer off the 3D printer. Now, the 3D printers are great for making geometries. Like, for example, I made a cutout for those screw heads that stuck up a little bit. Putting these reliefs and radiusing them and all that, a lot easier to do on a 3D printer than actually machining them. But the question is, will this work? The answer is, I have no idea. I haven't actually tried this yet. But we're going to, and we're going to find out. Now, a couple of considerations were temperature. Will it melt? Now this stuff is formed by melting and then fusing into place, but it does that at 215 degrees Celsius, which is over 400 Fahrenheit. As the carburetor, as air goes through it and pulls the fuel in, that fuel atomizes and vaporizes. That cools the air down. So the air pumping through the center of this is actually going to be a lot cooler than ambient temperature. So I don't think it's going to be a problem on temperature. The next question is, will it leak? Are we going to get vacuum leaks through it? I think that's a strong possibility. So I'm going to have to take that into consideration. You can fill these, you can actually paint them and actually seal them pretty well if you need to do that. However, there's another consideration. Will this melt with fuel? I have no idea. I should go dunk it into gasoline and see what happens.
There's some gasoline, spare piece of PLA. Let's see what happens. All right, it's been about an hour. Let's see what we got. Well, certainly didn't dissolve. Might be a little softer than normal, but doesn't look like it's falling apart for sure. So, maybe, but to be on the safe side, we're gonna have another plan.
But I have another solution and a way around it. And it might be able to fix both the vacuum problem and any potential fuel exposure. I have an old piece of exhaust tubing. What I'm going to do here is actually size this oversize. I'm going to shove that exhaust tubing through the center. So all the fuel and air going through it, it's just going to go through tubing, not actually through the plastic. Also, that'll act as a safety. If this degrades somehow, I'm going to keep this inside there so no plastic actually gets sucked into the motor and causes problems. So we're going to sleeve it, have the adapter on the outside, and let's see how this whole thing works. All right, here's a close-up of the spacer. So we've got the printed outside, the piece of exhaust tubing on the inside, a little bit of a lip so the exhaust will go around. As it compresses, this spacer will stop it from squishing the plastic. And now I just got to make gaskets.
Okay, got the spacer mounted, carb mounted. I went and hooked the return spring here just loosely because there was no return spring and I don't want it to vibrate open and go wide open. Got a fuel line ready to hook to something, and pretty much I think we're about ready to crank it over and see what happens. So we need a battery next. I realized I can just hook this choke cable up. Even though I don't have a throttle linkage, I could give it high idle if I need to with the choke. It'll help for starting it too. And it's real easy to hook up. There, choke's done. Now I'm going to try to fill just the bowl up with fuel. I don't have any fuel line hooked to it obviously, but a bowl full will be enough to see if this thing will even start. Also, I'm not sure if hydraulic oil is going to spray out of it. I know some stuff's disconnected, so we're going to see what happens there. I don't want to run too long. Fire. Oh, in the vent. Here we go. We got it going in the vent. A little spilling's over, but that's just juicing the carburetors. All right, that should be enough to do something.
Going in. Sounds promising. Let's see if the choke works. Okay, fluid spraying everywhere, so I shut it down. But it started. I want to show you guys something. Now, I don't want to have oil in my groundwater, but there's something interesting about the dirt here. They call it caliche. It's very high clay content. It's really similar to the old oil dry that's a kitty litter style clay oil dry. So let me show you why I don't worry too much about dumping oil in the ground and what you can do about it. Here's the area of that oil spill, and their oil is right on the ground. It's not there. All that oil gets trapped in the clay here, and it doesn't go down. If I have a spill like that, take up a couple inches of dirt, and we've got the bare ground that has no oil on it right below. So that oil doesn't go into the groundwater, it just sits on top and can be disposed of with the soil when you have a big spill. Which for me works out great, because I spill stuff everywhere. But I can clean it up and it doesn't sink in. Now this is where all that hydraulic fluid was pouring out. This piece of tape covering up that open part of the torque converter area. That open area is supposed to have a plate on it with lines going to a valve. So we're going to do something about that. Now I got a box of parts along with this vehicle, and among those parts is this, which is supposed to bolt to the transmission and cover up those holes. It has ports for hydraulic lines on the backside. Now, this vehicle is supposed to have a hydraulic valve that is electronically controlled on the shift lever. There's a little button, you pull it, and it disengages that clutch. That I don't have. However, I did get a manual valve. So we need to hook up this manual valve according to the hydraulic diagram drawn on the door and into that transmission to get this clutch system working. So let's figure that out. Now that area has some bolts around it, a couple of holes. Looks like we have bolts on the outside that bolted on, and these appear to be fluid transfer ports. And this one, oh yeah, that one, all right, so this will be a mirror image. This one will go that way, maybe. Or does it go this way? All right, we have to refer to, here is a diagram. Front of tractor, center, top of valve, bottom of valve. So maybe like that. That kind of looks like it. Okay, we'll mount it that way and see what happens. There. Perfect gasket. Or, you know, close enough. Okay, now this valve, it looks like it had been installed right here. You can even see the peninsula-shaped bolt pattern. That actually makes a lot of sense, because this is replacing the electronic disengagement in the transmission. Basically, it'll be like a clutch. You just press the knob in to shift. So it makes total sense. I can see why they went with this. And so I'm going to re-bolt it here and then try to figure out the lines. Get everything hooked up. So far, so good. We're in my storage shed here. Somewhere here, I have a bunch of leftover fittings from when I built that tractor. There we go. Baggies of fittings and hydraulic line. So, good thing I saved this for 20 years. We're going to see if we can use all this to put this together. Let's hope I have the right fittings. There's a couple bags in here. We might be able to piece something together. I don't have enough hydraulic fittings to get that torque converter switch working, so I'm going to work on brakes in the meantime. I got this moving a little bit. Been soaking with oil. Ooh, it's going better now. Soaking the whole linkage here. Oh yeah, we might have an emergency brake. Oh yeah, that works. Some people just think you just pull the lever and it's done, but there's actually an in-cab adjustment. Oh, it's even turning. When you turn that knob, you actually can adjust where it has tension from the driver's seat. Okay, now the brakes totally don't work. And first thing to check is the complete lack of fluid. So they probably leak, but without fluid, we don't know where. So we're going to fill it up and let it leak out and find out where the leak is. Found the leak in the master cylinder, or at least a leak, right there. It's coming right out the end. But if you pump it enough, it actually feels like we're getting brakes. So I'm going to see if I can find a rebuild kit for that and rebuild that cylinder. I tried to find a repair kit for this master cylinder, and I could not find one anywhere. But I did find the master cylinder is available in a lot of places. Now, interestingly enough, I tried online, which is usually a cheap way to go. They were pretty expensive. Napa had them at the best price, and I had it the next day. So it's always worth checking all your sources. The normal cheap ones are not always the cheapest. I'm gonna pop this off first while it's still held securely by the vehicle. And I'm glad I did. That's on there. There we go. There she goes. Okay. Yeah, let's make sure the new one fits. Oh yeah. Now I've got this whole master cylinder installed, the lines on and everything. So I'm going to do the bench bleeding part right here while mounted because it's a lot easier. Looks like we're good there. So we're going to put in that plug and see what we got. Feels like it's filling up something. Now this does have another master cylinder down below. So I'm not sure what it takes to bleed that. But actually, that feels like brakes. We might have something here. We might have brakes. I'm gonna go ahead and hook up a throttle linkage. Made a little Z-bend in a piece of aluminum stock. Gonna put that somewhere around there. Well, maybe angle it so it grabs. And that's gonna be my throttle linkage. It should work good enough. Not like we're really going to care about throttle response a whole lot. Now, one thing I did before I started actually finalizing this linkage is I took the choke off and backed the idle screw all the way off. That way I'm sure the butterfly is as far back as it'll go because we don't want the throttle linkage to be keeping the throttle open. We want the adjustment to be on the screw. I've got one hole existing. I drilled a hole off center here, pop my linkage in, and then wherever that falls, I'm going to drill a hole straight through this piece and that back piece, throw another bolt in, and we're all set. The hydraulic tank was almost empty. Thinking that leaks too. It's even got a cool little dipstick for it. My fittings finally arrived. And these are important because my transmission lines are really close to the frame rail. So it's going to be going out and it needs to take a hard turn, otherwise the rubber line really has to bend. Now this had rubber lines on it, they were leaking badly, looked like right where it was bending. And I think what happened is they bent them too far and the rubber just gave out. So by doing this, hopefully we'll prevent any problems in the future. Now one important thing is I ordered regular 90-degree fittings. I also ordered another size. I ordered the long fitting. So you can see the long one is longer. There's a very important reason for that. That is because when these fittings get close together, you have to turn them. And on a 90-degree fitting, sometimes they run into each other. So the long fittings will actually stack, which means you could take this one, install the short one first, turn it over the short one, and you can still install them. If you try to turn that short one, you never get it out. So you have to do it in the right order, but it can be done. Whereas if you have all the same height, sometimes you can't actually install them. If I try to put this one in here, see, it's gonna run right into these other ones. Now this long one, we can thread right in, and it clears over top of the other ones. Got a little minor problem here. I've got the hydraulic diagram on the door on the passenger side. I also have the hydraulic diagram on the door on the driver's side. Those two are different. The previous owner says this is the right one, so we're going to hook it up like this and see what happens. I'm going to add a little more ATF to this torque converter because I know that I spilled some. I know that the lines leaked. How much? I have no idea. So how much am I going to add? That much. That looks perfect. I've got a gas can securely attached by a C-clamp to the headlight bracket. We got a gravity feed line going to the carburetor with a filter and a valve. So this is a real pro system here. I also have a catch can directly underneath my gas tank because I know that valve leaks, so that's for, you know, safety, because safety first. More choke. I think the brakes booster shot. When I hit the brakes, it dumped fluid into the motor. So that's what just killed it. So, gotta figure out how to fix that. This is the vacuum line to the brakes. I've already cracked it loose. We're gonna solve this problem. Alright. And no more leaking booster. Now, we're gonna try just putting in gear first, then starting it and see what happens. This should be interesting. Brakes work. I can stop it. Oh, maybe it's starting to work. Let's try releasing. There we go. Well, it did something. Anti-funnel. It's got a really small nozzle. Now, I'm almost a half gallon in here and I'm still needing more fluid. So that might be the problem with the clutch, is just air everywhere. Scored a set of 1020 mud grips. Got a set of 4 that hold air on rims, 3 of them are good, and a spare. Now these things are 41 inches tall. Just for comparison, let me show you. Those are some serious tires. Figure I'll take you along for the ride on changing one of these tires. It's sort of a boring process, but I'll try to make it quick. As easy as that. One thing, you may have noticed that these rims are red. They actually came off an old fire truck. Sort of cool. Well, there we have it. It works. It's running pretty nice. It starts right up. The hydraulic clutch is starting to work better and better. It still has a little bit of delay, but that's probably normal. But it does work every time. I can shift it. Brakes work. Emergency brake even works. We got 4 matching tires on here. Everything seems to steer. You can just hop in and drive it. So that leads me to the question, what do I do with it? Now, I don't actually have any airplanes around to tow. So other than that, I'm not sure what to do with this. Let me know if you have any ideas. Give me a comment. Give me some good ideas. Maybe I'll come up with something interesting to do with it. But for now, I can at least move it around the yard. Well, this was a fun little project. It's a neat machine. And I had a good time getting it running. And it worked. So that's even better. That's the icing on the cake. I'll probably have more fun once I figure out what to do with it. But in the meantime, you guys keep having fun too. And we'll see you later.